Hello everyone, you are welcome to this lecture where we are continuing with the data collection methods, and in particular in this lecture we want to look at the data collection approaches. I'm still your course facilitator, Dr. Mark Kahwa, from the Faculty of Education at the Mountains of the Moon University. So we want to look at the data collection approaches, and under these approaches we have the quantitative and the qualitative approaches. So when you are going to collect the data, you can take any of those approaches. But there is also the third one, the mixed design approach. But majorly these are mostly these are the major ones, the qualitative and the quantitative and the qualitative approach. Now, quantitative approach, what is this approach when it comes to data collection? Now, in the quantitative approach, it means that the data collected is in numerical form. It means the data is in numbers. The data can be counted. That is one. Then two, data that can precisely be measured. It means you can measure that data. For example, age, it can be cost, it can be length, it can be height, it can be area, it can be volume, it can be weight, speed, time, and so on and so forth. So data that can precisely be measured. For example, you can measure the volume, you can measure the weight, you can measure the speed, you can measure the cost, the age, the length, and so on and so forth. Now, another characteristic of this type of data is that it is harder to develop, but easier to analyze. If you analyze using the available analytic softwares, it becomes very easy to analyze. For example, if you use the SPSS, so if you use the SPSS, it can become very, very easy for you to analyze. Just by the click of the button, you'll already have analyzed it, for example, from your data. If you wanted to know how many are males, how many are females, by the click of the data, that information will come. If you wanted, for example, under the demographic information, if you wanted to know the educational levels, how many are at diploma, at degree, at master's, at PhD, that will come by the click of the button. So depending on which information you want, but in principle, what we are saying is that this kind of data is easy to analyze as compared to the quantitative, as we shall be seeing. Now, I mean as compared to qualitative. Now, qualitative. Now, this is the data that deals with the description. Now, this is the type of data where you describe things, where you narrate, where you explain by the use of words, and that kind of data is less structured, easier to develop. But the most important aspect of this data is that it can provide rich data, detailed, and is widely applicable. It is challenging when it comes to analysis, because it is detailed. People will narrate their opinions on a certain phenomenon. People will describe. Now, the analysis becomes difficult because you have to cluster that information in terms of different themes and sub-themes, and then be able to analyze it. So if, for example, you are not using any analytic software, it becomes hard to analyze. It is labor intensive to collect. Labor intensive to collect because you as a researcher or research assistant, you really have to sit, for example, in an interview and take time, have to write. If you are to record, you'll have to record and then afterwards transcribe. So that's what we mean when we say it is labor intensive. So it involves a lot of efforts, it involves a lot of work as compared to quantitative. Usually generates longer reports. So you can normally generate longer reports from this kind of data. So when to use quantitative approach? One, if you want to conduct statistical analysis. Two, if you want to be precise. Three, if you know what you want to measure. Do you want to measure the relationship, for example, between motivation and job performance? Do you want to measure or to find out the relationship between punctuality and job performance? Do you want to know, for example, the relationship between motivation and the job and job readiness and so on and so forth? So what do you want to measure exactly? Want to discover a large group and so on and so forth. When it is qualitative, if you want to narrate, if you want to have an in-depth information, if you are not sure what you want to measure and do not need to quantify the results, if you don't want your results to be in a statistical format, so you just want to narrate, to describe, to explain the phenomenon as it is, then there you can use the qualitative. And normally as a researcher, the nature of your objectives or the nature of your research questions will always dictate what kind of approach you will take. Whether you will take the qualitative approach or whether you will take the quantitative approach. Now, of course, I also talked about the mixed design approach. So the mixed design approach is a combination of the two, where a researcher can begin by using quantitative, and then as the research progresses can use now quantitative. So a combination of the two, the qualitative approach and the quantitative approach, is what we call the mixed design or the mixed approach. Now, obtrusive and unobtrusive methods. What do we mean when we talk of the obtrusive? Now, obtrusive data collection methods that directly obtain information from those being evaluated. And here, for example, from interviews, from surveys, from focus groups, from observation. So that is an obtrusive. And in there, you will collect the primary data. We have already talked about the two types of data, the primary and the secondary. So with the obtrusive, you will collect the primary data. We have an obtrusive. Now here, data is collected from documents. This This one is collected from documents and not directly from respondents. Now, from documents, from observation at a distance, analysis of documents such as reports, such as magazines, such as articles, such as research proceedings, chapters in books, and then books. So that is what we call an obtrusive method. Triangulation. What do we mean when we talk of triangulation? Now, triangulation increases accuracy of the data, and accuracy of the data leads to accurate findings. Now, when we talk of triangulation, we mean the use of more than one. Triangulation of methods, for example. It means the collection of same information using different methods. For example, if I'm investigating the instructor's opinion regarding e-learning at Mountains of the Moon University, I can use different methods there. I can use a questionnaire to collect that information. I can use interviews. I can use a focus group discussion. So, by the use of those different methods, like in that example I have used 3 methods, it means I am triangulating methods. But there is triangulation of sources. This means the collection of same information from a variety of sources. So I can collect information from direct from the respondents. I can collect information direct from documents. So that is triangulation of sources. Triangulation of evaluators. Collection of same information from more than one evaluator. That is what we call triangulation of evaluators. Okay. So there are 2 important concepts that we normally talk about in regards to data collection. We always talk of validity and reliability. And these are very, very important concepts. Now, 2 concepts, these are central to collection of data, in that the methods used must be both valid and reliable. So the methods we use in the data collection, we always say they must be both valid and reliable. So what does it mean when they say that a method must be valid? A method must be reliable. For example, if you have used interviews and they say no, that method you have used must be valid. What does it mean? Now, validity. This refers to whether or not a method measures what it is set out to measure. If, for example, does an intelligence test really measure intelligence? If, for example, I want to measure temperature, what can I use to measure temperature? Can I use a tape measure to measure temperature? If I use a tape measure, then that would mean that the instrument I'm using is invalid, because it is measuring what is not supposed to measure. And reliability means that each time an instrument is used on the same subjects, in the same condition, it yields the same results. It refers to the issue of whether or not a method of measurement works consistently in producing similar results in similar situations. For example, if an evaluation tool is used with this group of students at the beginning of the term, will it give similar and comparable results when it is used with that same group at the end of the term? If the answer is yes, and then it is reliable. Now, we shall look later on at how to measure validity and how to measure reliability in research. So for now, we can take a break. We shall pick up from here. Thank you so much.